comments and questions and join in the conversation.
General fund revenues, the local property tax collections at the end of the third quarter are reported at 160.8 million. That's about 98.4% of the budgeted amount. This time last year, we were at about 93.3, but this time last year, the deadline for taxes was in March, not January. We had a tax anticipation note of $15 million that we drew down in October. And we paid that completely in February of 2022. State revenues are 72.6 million or 67% of the budget at the end of the third quarter. Collections last year were at 66%. General fund expenditures, the total spending is reported at 180.5 million or 65.8% of the budget. Prior year spending at this time was at 64.6%. Special revenue expenditures are reported at 69.7% of budgeted amounts at the end of the third quarter. Prior year expenditures were at 52.4%. ESSER expenditures in the third quarter amounted to $4.4 million. For debt service, local property tax collections are reported at 74.4 million, or almost 101% of the budgeted amount. Last year at this time, we were at 94.7%. We made principal payments during the year up to the third quarter of $72 million for the outstanding debt. For capital projects, the outstanding capital projects of the 8% list are 81% complete for the 6 years that are shown at the end of the third quarter. And the 2019 referendum projects are 71.3%. paid or encumbered as of 3/31/22. I think we're actually paid at about 34.5% of the referendum.
Could you explain the different items that are over 100% expended and why they are?
Items that are 100% or more expended.
Debit service fund, the school food service fund, the internal service fund, the debt service fund, and lastly, the internal service fund. That's I'm sorry, that's not the revenues I'm not concerned about. I'm concerned about the expenditures. There's just two. And that's the debt service fund and the internal service fund.
Yeah, on the debt service, after we completed the budget last year, our financial advisor revised our payment schedule. So therefore, we went over budget to meet his plan. He had a plan, out your plan. And it was necessary to increase some principal payments during the year to make his plan come.
And that overage came from the debt service fund balance, correct?
It did. But we also had a little bit of an overage in revenues. Yeah. Internal service fund. And we are just now catching the what's the best way to say this? We had in 2018-19, we had a tremendous amount of claims, and a lot of them were large claims, but workman's comp. And we're just now getting to the point where we're having to pay all those out. So we're kind of all coming together at once, kind of like they just happened. So it's just put us over for this year. If you add all the years together, we're not over. But if you look at this year by itself, we are.
Okay. And what is you see the fund balance, we don't know what our ending fund balance is going to be, but what do we expect it to be?
In the internal service fund, we typically have about $2 million, I believe, in the internal service fund,
Right.
and that's to fund the liabilities that are outstanding.
Right.
So, the particularly large claims are covered by the fund balance amounts.
There any other questions on the? I looked through all the lines, and obviously at the end of the third quarter, we should be at about 75% expenditure. I found very few, if any, that were above that level of expenditure. Our revenues are above 75% revenues expected. That's again, good news. So I didn't see anything specific there. Are we going to talk about the referendum and the 8%?
Rachel's hands up.
Okay, stand by. Dr. Wisniewski, you had something?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I wasn't sure if we were continuing to proceed past this page, if there was going to be additional report, or if I should go ahead and ask my questions. I just had kind of a formatting question, if anything.
We're done.
Go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you. So my question has to do with kind of the breakdown of the different budgetary comparison schedules, I believe, for expenditures. It starts on page 6. And the way we have it broken out is I just kind of want to get an understanding of the breakouts here, because I see Montessori programs and IB broken out, and I wasn't sure if there was any other programs that could be or should be broken out as well in this report.
This report is based on the template and the State Department Accounting Handbook. It's a guideline that the state mandates with certain account numbers. And so we have utilized all that apply to us when it comes to our expenditures. And so we don't have a lot of flexibility of altering those. But we certainly, if a new program is added for any reason, we typically, pay close attention to the manual, although it generally comes out very late in the year. So one of the newer ones, there are a few of the newer ones, and that is the English as a second language. I believe it's in the limited English proficiency. I think we've only been using that one for a couple of years. And also career development facilitators is a relatively new one that we have utilized. And it's on page 12, at the top of page 12. So we are utilizing those and separating out any of the career specialists. So as those come available or changes are made at the state level, we try our best to catch those and follow suit with the state.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I knew there had to be a method and a reason to it. So I appreciate your explanation. Thank you.
Can I ask an additional, if you use state funding codes, a standard state funding code?
They are. We have a handbook that's probably a couple hundred pages in a binder. And it designates the specific code for the program, the specific code for the object, the specific code for the fund. And we must follow those, and our accounting software must be built to accommodate that. We can read, every school district is a little different. You can build your codes, but you have to build their segments into your code, wherever they may be. They may be in different places. But we have to design our account codes to be able to pull information for the state based on certain categories. So at the end of the year, when we issue our audit, we have a template. We have to key in every bit of the actual and budgetary data for the end of the year. And they use that as a comparison for every school district in the state.
Any other questions? Are we going to talk about now the 8%?
We can.
Are you going to say anything, or is that open for questions?
We can open it up for questions.
I'll start off. I see we have capital projects 8% for 2018. And I see one furniture replacement at May River High School for a total of $6,000 is the only one that's complete but charges outstanding. How can that be?
charges outstanding on furniture.
That's some cafeteria furniture, they just picked it up. We haven't,
2018?
well, the project got on here this current year. They had money left over in this furniture budget, and that's what it's good.
So the board recently, we brought the information forward on unused funds. So those will be closed out this fiscal year, the 2018 and 2019 funds, and they will no longer be able to be used. And they will be rolled into the conversation of the 8% projects that we'll be having with board, the operations committee probably first. I think the next operations committee begins the discussions of 8% project lists for the year. So we'll be expecting to bring these forward to have a conversation of these funds that are available to either offset projects or offset bonds in that meeting. Then they'll be closed.
I've had a problem for a long time about not closing out these 8% projects. And I'm going to give you fair warning. I'm going to go to the operations committee and ask them to explore the possibility of establishing a policy that says when these 8% funds get closed out. I believe that 2 years after the time that monies are spent, it's adequate time to close out these projects. And so I'm just giving you a fair heads up, because this is camouflage. You know, we got all kinds of papers here that really don't tell us much. And so that we spend time looking over at things saying, well, why are we still having projects like this furniture thing? And that's just not good business practice anyway. I don't know of any business that keeps capital expenditures or capital funds open more than a year or two after the capital project has been initiated or completed, essentially completed. You know, I realize there are last minute things that come up. That's why you have it for at least a year. You hold it open for at least a year, because you've got bills that come in a little late. But this is just really unsatisfactory. So I'm just giving you a heads up. I will also compliment, though, I really like the referendum projects, the way you have it displayed in the last 2 pages that shows the total, the bond amount, which is the budget, the total expended, which basically means it's obligated, and then the total what's actually been paid. That gives you, and then the one on the last page gives you one for all the projects. And that's very, very helpful. Any other questions or comments from committee members?
None here.
Okay. So do I have a motion to recommend that the full board approve the third quarter, actually it's the third quarter financial report? Do you have something?
Yes, sir. So I've changed things up a little bit as far as our reporting. We have a PE, and I typically bring those forward once a year, and it will include the dates that each of the items were presented, each of the quarterly financial reports were presented to the board. So my thought was that we would approve that once a year instead of every quarter, but based on the conversations of variant governance, that either method is satisfactory.
We have been doing it by quarter.
Yes, we have been. Yes.
And why would we not?
Because it talks about the PE talks, or the OE discusses compliance with meeting the requirements of quarterly financial reporting and a slew of other requirements that happen throughout the year. So it is one component of the OE, one requirement of one particular OE subsection, but not the entire OE. So So the thought was that we bring the OE as a whole to get once a year with a summary of the reports that had been given throughout the year, but
David Sampson.
David, Mr. Sturbiger?
Thank you. Just a nit, we don't approve this, we accept it.
Yes, that's correct.
okay.
Okay. So what does the committee members want to do?
Well, you're gonna be presenting this, correct, on Tuesday night.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't really have to do anything,
Probably not.
No.
because you're gonna be bringing it to the board anyways.
You'll be bringing it to the board,
Yes.
and there's not really a motion that you need.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Any other comments? The next item on the agenda is the model procurement code exemptions.
Haley Yinger is going to take this on, this discussion on and lead the way.
Well, thank you again for having me. This is the executive summary that I've prepared for you based off what we'll go over today. So the state has accepted and approved Beaufort County School District's 2020 School District Model Procurement Code as recommended by the board. The goal of the procurement staff is to adopt the code at the will of the board with an effective date of July 1. And this will allow FY 22 and 23 to be audited on 2 different procurement codes. So we have that separation to help expedite the audit process and reduce any errors. The adoption of the 2020 School District Model Code includes the adoption of the state's procurement exemptions in addition to the current exemptions that were previously approved by the board from the current procurement code. And then the procurement department has also proposed additional exemptions, which we went over from before the last committee meeting. The procurement department is currently drafting internal policies and procedures as required by the 2020 model code that will be reviewed and approved by the superintendent as required by the code. So current recommended timeline is 5/17. Code goes back to the board for the second and final reading for the board for final adoption. And then 5/17 exemptions are presented to the board for adoption, and it does have to occur as a separate motion. And then July 1, the new code is effective.
Any questions or discussion?
Yes, sir. I just have one.
Go ahead, Dr. Wisniewski.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to make sure that I understand the additional, there's no additional exemptions that the procurement department is bringing forward that we haven't seen to date. We've seen all these, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Just want to make sure.
And so we have no real committee action to take on this because we will have the second reading at the next board meeting, correct?
I would think a recommendation from the committee would be in order, so that there would be some, a recommend.
That you recommended to the main board.
For adoption.
But how many readings do you have to have?
This is the second and final.
Second and final,
Yes.
okay, yes, then you're right.
Yeah.
So do I hear a motion to recommend that the board approve the 2020 school district model procurement code?
I think you want to say the committee
Motion to recommend to the full
Full
board.
board.
to approve, yeah. I'll say that.
So it's been moved and seconded to recommend approval to the full board of the 2020 school district model procurement code. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Chair Guyer, I think that we'd want a second motion now that we also recommend approval of the exemptions. Because I have.
Yes.
I move that the finance committee recommend to the full board approval of the exemptions. Adopted.
Second by Mr. Campbell. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to recommend approval of exemptions to the procurement code at the next board meeting, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Wow, moving right along. Future topics, we had in our minutes a future topic to discuss, and it's not on the agenda to discuss, I don't. But it's a minority woman-owned business and enterprise and starting salaries and strategic goals for starting salaries. Now, the minority women-owned business enterprise, we can.
At the next meeting.
At the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Now, the starting salaries and strategic goals, we have a compensation study that's going to be done. Shouldn't we be waiting until that is completed?
Yes, sir. I'm not sure, I don't know if I brought that one forward. I don't recall if it was another board member bringing that one forward or not, but I think we address a lot of that in the budget
Yes.
this year. And so I don't have anything prepared to bring forward for next meeting.
But the strategic part of this, I mean, I know we're talking salaries for this year's this coming year's budget, but strategically, that's something that should be discussed. But again, we should have the compensation study as a baseline to start on. Any other topics?
We will have the tax recommendation for either a tax anticipation note, or if we see that it's not needed, we'll bring that forward as well. So I would like a discussion of the tax anticipation note at the next meeting. We do have, I would like to provide an update of the timeline of the final, third and final referendum bond issuance that we just, the board just approved. So I'll give you a timeline of events because we will be selling that in June. So I can give you an update on bond rating, calls, and all of those things that'll be coming. And finally, we'll have OE5, which is a financial planning, which is more of a budget OE. So as we're finalizing the budget in the month of May, hopefully, I can bring the final annual report for OE5 together as well. So that's good. Sounds like it makes about 4 items.
And the next meeting is scheduled for when? Yeah, problem.
So, Mr. Guyer, Ms. Crosby, will Brian Nurick, he'll join us for that conversation on that referendum bond that we approved. It was 139 million.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I can
Yeah.
check his schedule and
Okay.
make
All right.
sure that he
So I
is
just
able
giving
to
you
attend.
Yeah.
Included.
Our second meeting should be June 9th. Is that fine for
At 5
everyone?
o'clock is 5 o'clock, all right?
5 is good for me,
Yeah.
real good for me.
Fine.
Right.
Dr. Wisniewski, is that all right with you?
I was just looking at my calendar.
What's the date?
June
9th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think I can swing that. I'll be out of town, but I will make it work.
Great. All right. I hear we have no other business on the agenda. Do I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved, yeah.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, that's good.
Public forum is tomorrow, right?
Yeah, we have operations first at Bluffton. Operations is at 4, and then the public budget forum is at 6.
6.
So,
Now, I saw, are we going to have the breakout sessions? Is
Yeah, I saw that too.
That sounds kind of fun.
I don't think so.
It said that in the
It
announcement.
said that in the announcement that came out. Do you know about that
It would be.
I'm sorry.
for the budget forum tomorrow?
there are breakout sessions?
We are doing like a listen and learn tour style meeting. So that we have groups of people sit together and come up with, answer certain questions, give feedback, and then allow them to speak and give the feedback in a, we have a microphone set up, so it's more of a listen and learn style. So that you get groups of people
Yes, ma'am.
together and
How are you gonna
Yes.
configure the groups?
they can sit where they